black owl-looking things are called owls. They are the items that are helping us do this program hybrid. So we ask that you silence your phones, keep talking to going outside if you need to have a conversation, because they do pick up on everything going on. Since we do have people online, they'll be a little confused. If you have a question, we have a little stool by the corner there, and we'll utilize the microphone, and we'll have you ask the question from the stool with the microphone, just so everybody online can also hear it. So, all right, my name is Denise Gluhan. Again, thank you for coming out today. This is our second annual Wildfire Community Preparedness Day. And if you want to contact me, there's my contact information. We'll go to the next slide, and also our website, pretty easy. It's if you just do LAHCFD, which is for the Los Altos Hills County Fire District.org. So again, I mentioned this is a hybrid meeting. So the OWL system that we're using for the AV system for the online participants will pick up other noises. So if you want to mute your phones, keep the talking to outside of the venue. In case of emergency, if we have an earthquake, duck cover and hold in place, then we'll evacuate out of either of the three doors. We have a door here, out in the lobby, there's two doors, and there's actually a doorway back, out that way where that exit sign is. So we'll exit to the safe area out here. If there were a fire, we're gonna do the same thing, exit to the safe area out here. I don't think we'll have any rain or tornadoes or anything like that, but just cover those. If you need to use the restroom, it's back through the doors here in the back of the room. There is a code, it's 3900 with a check mark. Please use the privacy button that's on the back side of the door because it doesn't lock necessarily automatically. Someone else can come in with the code. I'm going to show you the schedule of speakers in just a second, and then introduce by map the Firewise communities that we have established. This event, next slide, is actually sponsored by the NFPA, which is a national organization. This is always held on the first Saturday in May. We held our first last year at Town Hall for rain. So I'm thanking the rain gods for not pouring down rain this year. It was torrential last year, storming, and that was a little bit of a hard flex to get everybody inside Town Hall because it's a smaller venue. We have some great speakers today. As you can see, I'll introduce the speakers as they come up. We do have Dr. Swain who will be attending remotely. So you'll be seeing him coming up here. He won't be lecturing directly. Next slide. And here's bios, and I have the copies of the bios outside. If you'd like to see these are also online if you're interested in looking at these. But these are who's going to be speaking today. Next slide. So I wanted to introduce the Firewise community. So the NFPA is the oversight for the Firewise USA program, which is a national program. Actually, it goes internationally. We have currently active, this is a map of the Los Altos Hills County Fire District. So you can see that border, and then the divisions on there is actually from originally a company that was called Zone Haven, which was sold and became Genesis Protect. And that's an evacuation platform in case of emergencies. For residents, you can know your zone. And then you can, if they say to shelter in place, say in LAH 010, then you would know I live in 010 and I should shelter in place. Well, these were coming out about 4 or 5 years ago. And I thought we originally had the CERT and the neighborhood watch program set up under the Nextdoor app. And that had 57 areas in Los Altos Hills. And I thought that would be too many Firewise communities. So I said, let's try to use this new map that's around an emergency evacuation or emergency information. So that's the base map that drew the boundary lines for these districts. So when you see that up there, the green areas are recognized Firewise communities, and they get to choose their own names. They organize themselves, they manage themselves, and they choose their name. And then as residents inside those green boundaries, you are eligible to be a participating Firewise USA neighbor or resident, which I'll talk a little bit later, gives you some benefits being involved in the Firewise program. The white areas, well, let's do the green, kind of the off to the 09 and the neighbors taking action. They're in process of application right now. So they're not recognized yet. There is an application that goes in through the NFPA to become Firewise. And I'll cover that a little bit later on when I dive into Firewise a little bit deeper. We also have the really unique situation of having Hidden Villa be a Firewise community, which is a 1,600 acre land trust. It's one of the concerns being next to open space, that people have too. So it's great that they're gonna work on goals inside Firewise to become more resilient and prepared for wildfires. So our first community was Saddle Mountain. That was in 2022 that they became Firewise recognized, followed by Zone 33, which is over there to the right of 280, lower side of the map. That was 2023. Big jump in 2024, we have Dawson, LAH 015, Fremont Hills, Lumawood, Natoma. Those were all in 2024. Hidden Village just missed 2024 by a few days. They were the beginning of this year, the first week of 2025. We again have two in application process. LAH 009, currently called Sherlock Road Court, LAH 09, I think they said. And then the SCC 01 is the neighbors taking action. So that's the current recognized. So the white areas are all areas, if you either live there or know somebody, we'd like to get a Firewise community started there. My goal is to have this whole map eventually be green, and I'm going to talk about why that's important. Next slide. Okay, so this is an overview of what I'm going to speak a little bit, and I'm not going to go into deep dives today on a lot of stuff. I'd like the other speakers to give you more detailed information. We have a couple opportunities to learn about Firewise that we have monthly, and then we have meetings like this, but this is meeting your educational goal for Firewise. So every year annually, when these communities that I showed you that are recognized, they need to renew. And one of those things that they have to do is offer an educational experience. So that's what you have today. I'm going to overview the Firewise in general, some programs that the fire district and projects the fire district has, some information that the fire district has. I also have a little information about the Santa Clara County Fire Department and its County of Santa Clara's weed abatement program and the letters that they sent out this year. And then we have just a little bit of information on the local responsibility area, the new fire hazard severity zone maps that the town is in the process of adopting. Next slide. Okay, so what I have to start with at everything that we talk about preparedness is this is mostly focused obviously on wildland fire preparedness today, but I want to talk about the pillars of preparedness, and that's signing up for early alerts, which in the town of Los Altos Hills, we also have Nixle, which is Everbridge, and it's signed into the same platform as the Alert SCC. The Alert SCC is a paid platform by the County of Santa Clara it has a website for emergency notifications. So an emergency notification is a little different than, say, when you get like an Amber Alert. That's called a public emergency transmission. And that goes out depending on whatever the bandwidth of the system is, whether it's cellular or landlines. When you have an alert, when you have a program like the Alert SCC, that's a paid platform again by the county. So they're saying in the time of emergency, when you use the media bandwidth on cell towers, paid platforms will get priority over those public emergency or PET transmissions. They're assuming that in an emergency, because everybody gets on the phone, say there's an earthquake, everybody gets on their phone. Hey, did you feel that? Hey, are you okay? And we'll sometimes get busy signals during emergencies. They're saying when all the people start calling, it might be up to 20 minutes to be able to push those public emergency transmissions versus they'll get the emergency transmissions out that are on paid platforms within 5 to 10 minutes is the projection. We've not had to test that system yet, but definitely important if you have to do a wildfire evacuation, especially if you live quite a ways from your evacuation routes. That 20 minutes, if it's a difference in waiting for that Amber type alert, is very significant as the roads start to increase more volume of people trying to evacuate. Personal story, I have a house that's up in Pollock Pines in the Sierra Mountains. We had a Caldor fire there about 3 years ago. It's usually a 5-minute drive to Highway 50. It took my neighbors across the street 3.5 hours for a 5-minute drive. So just to let you know, the secondary egress, which is my next point, was blocked by fire. So there are 2 ways out, was now taken away. They had 1 way out. So that's why it's really important. If you feel like you need to leave, if it's an event of a fire, if you're thinking that, load your car up and leave because you want to get ahead of that. So my next thing on the 3 pillars that we talk about in preparedness is no 2 ways out. Kids learn this when they're in about 5th grade, out of their home. What are 2 ways to get out of your home? You can use, my front door and my window is typically what kids will say. Well, we're taking that 1 step farther, and let's say wherever you go, whether it's your home, whether you go to the movies, the grocery store, I'd like to invite you to look at what 2 ways out looks like for you. So what is a secondary egress? In the event, unfortunately, we have a lot of active shooter events that happen around the world, especially in the United States. 90% of the people will come in the door that they will leave through the door they came in. I can invite you, challenge you even to go and find that secondary door. At a Safeway, usually it's in the back where the restrooms are, where the stock is. But if you have that knowledge and he's coming in that front door, or she is coming, they are coming in that front door, you could be going out that back door and seeking safety. In the event of a wildfire evacuation, like I said, up in the mountains, they had 1 way out. Can you find that secondary egress? It might be weird, like going up Page Mill to 35 and up to 84, depending on how things are, if the fire's not in that direction. So again, being signed up for the Genesis Protect, that will also help you with that evacuation planning. So again, I don't want to scare anybody. I just want to engage you and have you consider those possibilities, because when we get in an emergency, we stop thinking with our front of our brain, we use our reptilian brain, and we start to react instead of respond. We want to stay in response where we're thinking with our prefrontal lobe, we're thinking about what we're doing, not just responding. And then last but not least, having some sort of a go bag, minimum of a 24-hour, ideally 72 hours is when they typically can get water, things like that in the emergencies. And then also, they like 7 to 10 days when you start talking earthquake preparedness. So that gets into bigger planning. But those are the 3 pillars. Sign up for early alerts, no 2 ways out of all emergency type situations, and have a go bag. Next slide.
Yes, we're recording.
Sorry, just wanted to double check. Okay, so my last component that I want to kind of do a quick review on is a fire science component. And there's, again, we have 3 pillars in our preparedness. We have 3 ways that homes catch fire. I just want to review this since this is a wildfire preparedness workshop. I want to talk a little bit about fire science because it's why we decide to do what we do and why we have the program set up as we do. So defensible space, when you look at direct flame, so those are flames actually burning up to the house. Defensible space interrupts that continuous fuel bed. So it doesn't, it reduces the potential for that type of fire to ignite your home. When we have these big conflagration fires like we've seen in LA, the Altadena area started out as a wildland fire, but quickly burned into a residential community and became house-to-house ignition. What we have in Los Altos Hills is Mother Nature has fire naturally. If we didn't have homes here, fires would burn in here naturally every so many years, maybe 50 years, it just depends. But that would be low intensity fires that would take out the low vegetation, the understory, trim branches up on trees. We have to duplicate that in our vegetation management. And then we call that the built environment when we go and put a home there. So we have 2 phases in our defensible space. We have the home hardening phase, and then we have the vegetation. And home hardening is how and what your house is built with, and then the vegetation manages what you do around your home. So defensible space, we count that generally as 100 feet. In the fire science in the town, it's adopted as 30 feet if you live in the incorporated. If you're in the unincorporated, it's 100 feet. But we're still going to talk about 100 feet today. Home hardening, now when we talk about embers, so embers are, and this is where the most recent fire science, you hear a lot about the 0 to 5 feet, and Ryan will be talking about the home ignition zones. Recent fire sciences show that as past practice, we were told when we had droughts to go ahead and mulch right up to the building, right to the foundation. Well, in the fire science world, they found that those embers that can fly a mile, up to 5 miles, depending on the wind columns, they find a receptive fuel bed. You have a receptive area on top of your roof, a big receptive area. They can slide down your roof into the gutters and find fuel maybe in the gutters that hasn't been cleaned. Also, the 0 to 5 feet around the house, the winds will blow the embers, because usually with these conflagration or wildland big fires, especially the tragic ones, it's red flag conditions. So that's high winds, low humidity typically, and low fuel moisture. A house is very low fuel moisture, right? Because it's basically all dry wood, basically, depending on what you've hardened it with on the outside. So again, what can we do for defense against embers? So that little ember is like a little arsonist. It can come and land and it can start a fire. It's being fanned by wind. Eventually it might find a little area underneath the stucco or the siding that it can penetrate, travel up the wall, get into the roof. So again, this is the second way that fires is through the embers. So that's combining the defensible space and the home hardening to lessen those exposures. And then the last is the actual radiant heat. So it's the exposure of just the heat itself. And they've kind of found that sweet spot at 30 to 40 feet. That's why in the incorporated town, they have 30 feet of defensible space. Because they're saying at that spot, that radiant heat is less likely to be able to catch that house on fire. There's enough airspace around there that it doesn't catch fire. Unless something inside that 30 feet catches fire, then obviously we change that. And when we look at that measurement, when you count from the home structure, its foundation plus any decking. So that decking becomes your start of your 0 to 5 feet if you have decks. It's not just foundation. Next slide. So now I'm going to go ahead and dive in. That's a little bit of the review on fire science and prevention. What is the Firewise program? And again, like I said, it's a recognized program that you go through. It provides a framework and helps residents to get organized together to take action to increase the ignition resistance of their homes and their community. Okay, so those are some fancy words to say neighbors getting together and doing home hardening and doing vegetation management in their defensible space and around their whole property. It's based off of fire science, and Jack Cohen was one of the original people that had given a lot of the background for this. We also have the Institute for Business and Home Safety that gives a lot of updated testing. They've done a lot of the testing where they blow embers at little built structures and see how those structures fail, how fire starts on those. The NFPA in general sets codes and standards for all kinds of things. Building codes is where it will affect you if you do a remodel or new construction, also NFPA. But again, like I said, it is the parent company for Firewise USA. And one of the other reasons why people have a reason to get started or participate in Firewise is in April of 2024, and Commissioner Clara impelled, because Firewise is such a successful program, impelled insurers to give a discount if you're a participating Firewise member. Varies from insurer to insurer, but if you're participating in a Firewise community, you are entitled to that discount. I have more information out in the lobby, and we're going to have Joel speak after Ryan all about insurance questions around that. So you're going to get a deep dive into that subject. So I'm going to not touch much more on that and let him give you all the best practices and recent updates. Next slide. So what does Firewise look like in general as far as participation?
Sorry, Denise.
That's okay.
I'm just trying to figure out.
There we go.
And then you're
Yeah, thank you.
sorry about
So what does it look like? This is 2024 numbers. So right now, across all Firewise communities, 2,710 in good standing. Almost half of those, 1,088, are in California. Last year, there were 474 new sites overall nationwide. 317 were in California. So you can see why the insurance commissioner's office said, hey, this program is working in California. I'm going to offer the insurers have to give a discount to people who are participating. What does that look like in investment? $293 million. So one of the most important things Firewise has residents do is track what they do in hours of time spent in vegetation management. Like today, this is an hour learning about vegetation and home hardening, and or money spent or time in the yard doing home hardening or vegetation management, property hygiene. So volunteer hours, 3.5 million. And then costs and shippers, contractors, again, home improvements of that number, 181 million. Next slide. What does that look like in Los Altos Hills? So this is kind of a rough, I don't have a really great way of capturing numbers. Last year, some of these homes were renewing and some of them were new applications. But what does it look like in the 3 topics that they collect? And the CAL FIRE is the organization that oversees Firewise applications and renewals in California. So this data is taken off the NFPA portal, the Firewise USA portal. So in total hours in Los Altos Hills last year with our 7 communities there, either recognized or in process, almost 11,000 hours in time spent around these risk reduction, almost $2 million in money spent around that. And then vegetation removal, can you just give me that?
Yeah. I wish I could.
It doesn't show up
I'm
on the slide.
I'm gonna.
There we go, thank
Do
you.
you mind
Almost-
that view?
Thank you.
Sorry,
Almost-
I wish I could.
No, that's okay, almost 10,000. You can go back to the other view, I think that's the only one that I kind of go to the corner.
I'll-
It's almost
that's
10,000
better.
cubic yards of vegetation removal. Next slide.
Okay.
And again, some of the other opportunities that you have to participate in Firewise after today. Let me start out with what do you need to become a Firewise neighborhood? A minimum of 8 individual parcels. You need 3 or 4 residents. We recommend to help start an organizing group to lead organizing residents through this application process that you do online. We have help from County Fire, who's out at a table today, and the Fire Safe Council, Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council, also has a table outside. And then, like I said, the biggest thing you can do as a resident is track all of those hours. And those hours are, you know, we have conversions of long leaf bags, but if you want to kind of an easy visual, if you look at your green waste, that's a half cubic yard. So imagine whatever you have, how many green waste bins is that? So that's what you can kind of use if you're doing work yourself, or you're putting out your green waste every week and you do that 52 weeks a year. Well, 25 or whatever, you know, 30-ish, 35-ish cubic yards just in your green waste. Another opportunity for education, we hold monthly Firewise meetings. They're called office hours. It's pretty casual. Residents can come at any level of knowledge on Firewise. And we talk on the first Wednesday of the month at 1:30, second Tuesday at 7 p.m. Anybody's welcome. We'll send out agendas. If you have an email with us, we'll send you the agenda and you're welcome to join us. Next slide. So the other thing that I'd just like to talk about is people renewing that are in Firewise communities, the leadership this year. We're going to be holding a workshop probably in September on how to best and easily get through the renewal process. After a certain amount of years, you have to replace some of your original documents that you put in. That kind of mentions that the risk assessment is at 5 years. The action plans are every 3 years. We have Saddle Mountain that needs to do that this year. So it just kind of gives you a little bit of idea of what, if you became recognized last year, when the next time that you would have to update some of your documents. But again, when I just want to remind people, when you collect and track your hours and your vegetation, include everything. A lot of people worry that the Firewise USA police are going to track your hours and come back and want you to show documentation. No. We actually, I can, on that other screen, there's a little bit of underreporting. We can actually look and see underreporting that shows up. So you don't need to embellish it, but please think about all the things you actually do to get prepared and have your home have property hygiene. Next slide. Home and property. So I'm just gonna real quick, we have more information out there on programs that we have available. So when I'm talking about residents doing work, that's, we have our home ignition zone, defensible brush chipping, the drop off. When you take classes, that's all kind of parcel or personal individual level. And then we start getting into neighborhood level. You're here learning about Firewise, that's neighborhood. We have CERT, Teen CERT, Neighbor Helping Neighbors coming. We do evacuation route hardenings as a district. So again, those are community level projects. We also have the Community Strategic Fuel Break, which is alongside the open spaces on the west side of Los Altos Hills. And a big project coming up is hardening and doing vegetation management on Highway 280, both northbound, southbound, and center divide. So that's starting this year. The planning phases are happening now. Next slide. Couple programs. I'm not going to talk too much about the HIZ. We've already talked a lot about Firewise. If you're in a Firewise neighbor, we have some literature. This is on the far right is a door hanger that you can leave if you want to work on letting your neighbors know that they don't happen to be home. So we have all this literature outside in the foyer area, along with the map of the district that you saw earlier with the Firewise communities. Next slide. We have on each of your chairs, there's a little pen, a notepad, and one of these brochures. How many people have used chipping before, the chipping program? Okay, little bit of change in the chipping program is that we went from going just cards twice a year that you got mailed to going to online registry a couple years ago. And now you can actually, if you have those 3 bins or the 2.5 cubic, or let's see, 1.5 cubic yards of minimum chipping, you can sign up online anytime, any month. You don't have to wait for your area twice a year. So that's that just happened in this last year where you can do anytime. Yes.
Can it include like leaves and smaller stuff that came down from trees?
Not on chipping. That would have to go in your green bins for the monthly drop off. It needs to be things that are chippable because they're gonna drag it. That's all gonna stay behind. Yeah, thank you. Next slide. And the last thing I want to cover as far as things that you get in the mail is the annual defensible space or WUI letters. They came out in February of this year. I have a little bit of sample about the language, but it's very in alignment with what the HIZ or Home Ignition Zone survey, which Ryan's going to talk about, has as items that get looked at. They want you to go around your house with that letter and make sure that you self-assess and that you're doing your defensible space maintenance and your property hygiene. The fire department, Santa Clara County Fire Department, may also come around on an engine company inspect your home, and a copy of their door hanger is up there. I know it's really too small to see, but if you find that on your home, it's going to give you the suggestion of what you need to do to improve your defensible space. Next slide. And then in the back, I'm not going to touch on this, but this is, I was mentioning earlier, there's about hazard severity maps have come out. I have a sample map back in that foyer, and if you have questions, we can talk about that back there and look at the map. This is the first time a map has been adopted since 2007. It's compulsory for the state now, so the town had opted out prior to that. They did not adopt a fire hazard severity zone map. They have to, it's required this year. So this is the minimum map produced by CAL FIRE, but the town actually selects what final version they want. Last slide. Any other questions that anyone has? Anybody online have any questions? Awesome. Well, what I'm going to do